And with that, we are live. Welcome to another edition of the Friday Farcast. I'm your intrepid host, Robert Phoenix. And today we got a great show, a really, really great show. Let me get my Ed Sullivan voice in tune with Lyle Coyotl. He's a really cool guy. You're really going to love him. And he is a Hollywood insider. He was an agent in Hollywood for a number of years, and we've connected through the work of Christopher Knowles. And Chris Knowles has been a guest on the show a couple times, and Lyle has assiduously followed his work. And so we intersected, I think, when Chris came on my show, and so we've connected a lot. He's been on just kind of been a part of Chattaria and watching the dailies, and he and I have talked and chatted a lot. He has a lot to share, and I can't wait to dive into the portal that is Hollywood in Los Angeles and Southern California. So part of this is the anatomy of a psyop, which we're going to go through. We're going to talk about Chris Rock and the slap, and there's some other things that are associated with that. We'll also get into a little bit about the whole Woody Harrelson thing, but then we're going to go deeper, and we're going to really do our best to pull some of the layers back here around Hollywood, and hopefully get some inside baseball from Lyle and kind of and how the machine works. And one of the things that he has shared with me is how there was a major sea change in Hollywood when it comes to programming. When I say programming, I mean it literally and figuratively. And he knows exactly when that happened and how it happened. So we're going to get into a lot of this, and I can't wait to bring him on the show here. But before I do, I don't have to, I actually want to talk about the sponsor of the show. And of course, that is True Hemp Science. And it is a website where you can get some of the best organic, consciously sourced CBD on the entire internet. And I talk about this every day, and there's a good reason, because it's good stuff. And if you are looking for things that can help you with your inflammation, pain relief, sleep, you name it, you can find it here. And the good thing about it is that, again, I say this every time I bring True Hemp Science up. True Hemp Science is Chris. And so if you want to find out more about the CBD, which CBD might possibly work for you, you can reach out, you can call him. He's not hiding out, right? His number's right here. And if you have any questions about CBD, he's happy to talk with you. If he's not there, he has somebody that is ably trained and knows the product inside and out, and they can help you as well. And here's the deal. If you buy $100 worth of product, just type in 15MINS, and that gets you free product, which means that you're going to get to try and sample some things that may not be a part of your order, which is always a cool thing. And then if you get $150 or more, you'll get free shipping. So truehempscience.com, 15MINS, and don't sleep on it. It'll add to the quality of your life. Unless, of course, you take the gummy at night, then you can definitely sleep on it. All right, let's bring Lyle in, and I'm really looking forward to because we just when we talk, we just start jamming. So now we get to just kind of jam in front of everybody. There you are.
You really talked me up. Now I'm nervous.
You should be. You're on. You are on, man.
So nice to see you, man.
Yeah.
And hello to all my friends in Chattaria who I see on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays on 15 Minutes of Flame. Sea Pines and Scrubbies and Queen Lisa.
Right. We got a rich roster. I guarantee you, I could close my eyes and pick one of them and bring them on the show, and they would be totally interesting.
Yeah, that's what I was telling my wife, is that this audience is quite sophisticated and all this kind of stuff. So I've got to really bring like really tiny little nuances that most people in this audience already know instinctually and are aware of instinctually, and probably came to the same conclusion themselves. But I'm just going to show you this anatomy of that. That's what I thought might be interesting.
Yeah, definitely the anatomy side of what we're going to talk about. And then, some of the inside baseball stuff that you and I were, chatting about before the show. And But before we do all that, let's find out a little bit more about you.
Pardon that my Portland shirt. And my wife was there a few weeks ago for
It's okay. Portland needs love too.
Yeah.
Back in the 90s, I remember I was living in late 80s, 89, 90. I was living in Seattle, and I wrote this article on real estate for Pacific Northwest magazine. And so I was going around and looking at the different markets and like the influx of Californians and all that shit. And I went to Portland, and I thought to myself, man, this is a really nice town.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah.
This is a really nice place. And if I was going to relocate, this is a place that I would think about. You're on a river, some nice old homes, right? And man, that went in a very different direction.
It's creepy. I mean, it's a really mysterious town too, with ancient Chinese history and stuff too. It's fascinating.
You know what really struck me about the first time I went to Portland? And it's the same thing that happened when I started to hang out in Seattle. I lived there for a year. It was the first time that I had like visceral contact with what I would call drifter culture, right? Like Portland was a town where drifters would go.
Huh.
You remember the Gus Van Sant movie about Portland and drugs?
Oh yeah, I've never seen it, but I know what you're referring to. Yeah.
Well, William Burroughs plays one of those characters.
That's right. That's why I know about it. Yeah.
So William Burroughs is like a junkie who lives in a hotel.
So much like a junkie.
Right. By the way, there was this woman who was a publicist in LA who lived in Burroughs' apartment building. And we were just friends. I spent the night in her apartment building. She said, "Oh yeah, William Burroughs just lived right down the hall from me here." But you can see like that characterization. These guys that are kind of marginal, but they're not homeless. Not like today. Like the drifter culture would live in these apartments that you would rent on a weekly or a monthly basis.
Yeah, the people nowadays are more like drug addicted vagrant zombies. It's really sad. That's
right. So it kind of descended from this kind of drifter culture down into the streets now.
The kind of guys who would use hobo language.
No, exactly. I mean, when I remember being in Portland and kind of seeing this, I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I never really saw that in San Francisco or, other places that I lived. So there was kind of this vagrant vibe at times to Portland, but a beautiful, beautiful place. Well, let's talk about you. First of all, how did you get to LA and how did you wind up in management?
Well, by the way, there's a big difference between managing and being a legal representative, which is what an agent is. But being an agent, I'm going to go the short bridge version. I just realized this could be interesting. I go into a nice East Coast college, NYU, and well, it's a piece of shit now in retrospect, but at the time in the 80s, it's a nice college, right?
Right.
And I became friends with a Malaysian guy, Carlos Rashid, and Rashid and I, later on became buddies. Later on, I married my first wife was his older sister. But at one point, I leave college in '86 and go to Malaysia, and I had studied comparative religion and film theory. So when I'm in Malaysia, I became buddies with a guy who was a childhood friend of my friend, who was a Eurasian fellow, and he studied video production in Australia. So he and I were always talking movies, and we're going to do this, and we had these ideas for TV shows, and we had one idea for a show, which is like an in living color show, a comedy sketch show. turns out one thing, you know how life is. I ended up working on a commercial fishing vessel in the South China Sea, which is docked in Borneo, okay, in
Wow.
what is East Malaysia, on the
Yeah.
island of Labuan, right? That's where it's ported. It's a Malaysian flag boat with mostly Malaysian flag vessel with mostly Filipino workers. So I'm on there for 2 years or whatever. I'm back at one point on land unloading our catch, right? Because we had to be big containers of tuna, right? You know, on the docks and all that. I got a telegram back at the office and where my bunk was in the office where I'd stay when I was on land. And the telegram was, Lyle, call me. TV3 Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia wants to buy our show. So I quit the fishing company, went back to West Malaysia and did a comedy sketch show, which was produced. I wrote and directed with my partner, and we had a Chinese woman, Linda Chong was the producer, and it was called Jangan Ketawa, which means don't laugh. And it was very much like a visual kind of humor because it was the first show in Malaysia ever in the history of Malaysia where we had 3 different languages, a multilingual show: English, Bahasa Malaysia, Tamil, and Hokkien or Cantonese. Okay, okay, so it's actually 4 languages, so multilingual show. And we had an all-male cast, and 2 of the cast members were what we called in those days pondan. Pondans were he/she's, or girl.
They're called pretty boys now, right?
Well, they're called women now.
Right.
So anyway, they were down. They were a special group. These 2, they were both sort of stand-up comedians, had their regular jobs, but they weren't really. They were still on the outskirts of society, which is the way.
Sure, they're very fringy.
But by the way, interesting enough, in Southeast Asia and in South India, the transsexual, what we call the transsexual now, or tranny, cross-dressers, men who dress like women, right, had a very special kind of place in cultured society. One was that they would play roles in theaters because women were practically considered prostitutes, like in ancient Greece. To be an actor, you'd be and quite often, and they would just adapt and become women, right? They would wear traditional women's clothing, and quite often they would become a nanny for a house in Malaysia, and they would then become part of the family, like a family member, and the kids would grow up with them, and that's so it was one of those fringy things. You don't really talk about it, but that's what they are. And you could go to a store, a clothing store, and you'd be waited on by one of the staff members, and they'd be a pondan, right? It was never thought of, right? They just blended into society and they were treated as women, right? But anyway, they became very famous, okay? And because of the show was the biggest hit show of all time, to the point where I was almost twice my name came up in Parliament to have me kicked out of the country because I was making these women so famous, these pondan, these he/she's so famous that boys were coming to school wearing their mother's pearls and stuff.
Oh, man.
And Malaysia, this is the Malaysian Muslim country, right? And at that time,
it's all your fault.
Yeah. Well, they had to blame somebody, right? So they instead of picking my Malaysian partner. So anyway, the point being that while we become a lot of us who've always been very liberal thinkers, most of your audience has nothing against a guy who wants to dress like a girl and act like a girl, right? But the trans agenda is what becomes kind of scary, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, so because of that, I did do a lot of acting, right? I would put myself in my own show sometimes, and then other producers would call and say, "Hey, the American guy, the Lyle guy, to speak Malay, can he be on my show?" And I go, "Well, that's me, blah, blah, I use the name Jamal because I wanted to put a Malaysian name on the thing. Hey, be on my 13 episode series." And so I did so I have a lot of experience actually on set too, though I never really liked acting. I was never great at it. But I could play the role, right? So I have a lot of that sort of inside stuff too, because I've been on a lot of sets, and I probably did well over 300 episodes of TV in Asia. Okay.
Okay. All right. So let me put a pause there because there's a couple of things I want to ask you about.
Yeah.
Okay. So number one, you're from the West and you're writing comedy for a Malaysian audience.
Right. Yeah. I learned to speak Malay. Okay.
So speaking Malay, okay, but how do you understand and find out what is funny for Malaysians? Because what might be funny for Malaysians may not be funny for somebody in the West, or is there kind of a universal theme for comedy? Like, how did you crack that code?
Leave it to Robert Phoenix to come up with the perfect question, because I still to this day say the greatest accomplishment of my entertainment, my 30-year career in TV and film, was understanding, learning comedy in a different what's the word? Different social moray. Okay. It's really fascinating. But because I did work on the fishing boat, because I had to ingrain myself into Malay culture a lot, who, by the way, looked a lot like my Aztec, cousins, which is really weird. I have so many Malay people I meet and I go, God, these people look like my cousins. But anyway, but you're absolutely right. The timing of a joke is completely different. Plus, we had a great cast. All right. So we would basically do a comedy sketch. It was like an In Living Color meets Benny Hill with none of the sex. Okay.
Right.
So a lot of visual humor because it was multilingual, because it was the first show ever where all three Indians, Chinese, Malays all tuned in at the same time. It used to be each would watch their Malay dramas or their Chinese shows from Hong Kong or the Tamil movies from India, right? But the first show where the ratings for the show were never beat ever because everybody was tuning in, right? So, but I learned a lot from them as well, and from my partner, my writing and directing partner, Harith, who is a very famous Harith Iskander, very famous multimillionaire now, of course, Asian comic, and I learned a lot from them too. But the timing is different. You sort of repeat the punchline almost like 1, 2, 3 times. It's not like British humor that we actually have. Americans have British sarcastic humor, and then British humor, and then Americans added sarcasm to it, right? Sarcasm does not go over in Malaysia at all.
They don't understand. They don't understand it.
Anywhere in Asia, it's like, don't even try it. They're going to take you literally, and that's it, right?
Wow.
So that was it. The timing was so different, and that an example would be, I'd put 2 characters down, and they're sitting at the roadside food stall at a table eating, like chit-chatting, and they were so funny. They just had this funny conversations in Malay and they're just rapping back and forth. And then Sri Shan, the Indian, would come up, excuse me, lah, but I need to write you a ticket, lah, a ticket for what? They'd be saying, and they're all funny, these people, okay? They're all great actors and comedians. And they're like, a ticket for what? Parking ticket, you're parking illegally. No, we're here eating food. We're eating food right now. And then the thing would go back and forth. And they go, no, this is illegal, and the camera would pan and you'd see a parking meter, and then you'd pull out to the wide shot, and they're actually, the table that they're eating at the roadside stall is in the parking space with the parking meter right there. And you see, so, the parking meter, of course, yeah. Allah, of course, parking wrong. And so they would repeat it like 3 times, and Malaysians are laughing all 3 times. So that's a classic example of Malaysian humor, how it's repeated then, and and that was, of course, visual, because we're going over 3 languages, so we have a visual punchline usually.
Right. Does that make sense? Yeah. And what about like the actors themselves? Did they stress physical comedy and the caricature of the faces, and like, what was that like? Yeah,
well, we had the Chinese guys were mostly acrobats, so they were big in the physical comedy. The one big fat Chinese guy we had was not an acrobat. He was a great comedian. Like Mr. God, I feel bad. I forget his name right now. Mr. Chin with the little glasses. He knew how to wear the black thick glasses. Like, what do you mean the bucking? He had a really, really funny way to shake his fat face.
Right.
Then there was the two women, and they were like, so there's a lot of very physical, very, what we call very broad and very big humor too. Yeah. And then the Malay guy was very, very Islamic, and he pretended he was a very serious guy and very quiet, because Malay people are quiet, shy people. That's just the way they're lovely people. And they're very, in those days, things have changed now, but you can still go out to the villages and you'll still find old Malay culture there. But yeah, so we had a very varied cast,
So you're writing for this, you're starring in a few of the skits.
Oh yeah, I'm putting myself in as the tourist or the businessman or whatever. And then I'd speak Malay in that, yeah.
So how many episodes? 300?
No, that show was only 2 seasons. That was 26 episodes. 26. But I was only in like 8 of them or whatever. But and only for like 1 sketch, right? But then I did end up doing a soap opera, family soap opera, which went on. It's called city of the rich, there's like a dynasty and Dallas sort of in Kuala Lumpur with rich people and
Right.
and I played the former ex-CIA agent who was a businessman. I was kind of crooked. I was the villain and all that, and,
Right.
and then I did other dramas where I played the Juru Gambar, which would be like the Juru Gambar, the photojournalist, and who's visiting, and I would be shown Malaysia. I'd go on some adventure with some other star, and there'd be a 13. They did the British system, 13 episodes, 13 in the closed-in series, right?
Right. So would you walk down the street and people would recognize you?
Funny thing is, I always thought that whoa, I'm gonna get some girls now, because I was still a young guy then, right?
Right.
And then there was this really handsome guy who I did a couple, who was in the same circle of people. I didn't really work with him that much. Hans Isaac, handsome fella, and I'd be at the Hard Rock Cafe in Kuala Lumpur, and a bunch of girls would be looking at me, and they'd come over like, "Hey, aren't you that guy on the show, City of the Rich? You play the Austin McCready?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's me, yeah." And they're like, "So you must know Hans Isaac."
So you were the bridge to Hans.
In those days, Asians didn't. It was not. They didn't really like, especially unless you're quite frankly a prostitute or something. You see these stories, and there's only certain places in certain cities where that exists. But
Right.
most women don't want to be. You're a whore if you go with a European. Okay, so it doesn't happen. But so they'd be. Yeah, Hans is meeting me here later tonight, so I'll tell him to send him over when he comes, right? It was like, and quite often too, which is interesting, I'd meet like old ladies, like really old machi, they call them machi, with the head dress, and they shop in the store, and they go, you Austin McCready, you're a very bad man, like you, very knockout, and they get hitting me, and they go, the child,
Wow.
Mom, no, it's just a character he's playing on the
Wow.
show. It's cute.
Wow.
It's really adorable, because this is back in this is 80s, early 90s, so it's this
Right.
and it's changed now. I mean, you can look at Kuala Lumpur, it looks like one of those horrific cities of giant, skyscrapers and whatnot.
Right. It's a city from the future, right? Yeah. All right. So you're there, you become
right. So
you become a star in Kuala Lumpur, and then what happens?
Well, I'm a entertainment figure, let's say, right? So anyway, I meet my beautiful, I'm married in this time period. I've married my best friend's older sister, divorced. We've divorced. We're still friends. I'm goddaughter of her, my nieces, of my stepsister. But anyway, we're divorced. But I meet my wife, current wife, and she's from Sweden. She was on business. We meet and we go to Moscow together, and I go, she goes, let's go back to Hollywood. You can do what you did in Hollywood in Malaysia, what you did in Malaysia in Hollywood. So we moved to LA in like 2004. And so that begins I'd worked in Hollywood a couple of times in the late 90s. I'd come back from Malaysia, done a movie or something, gone back again. But yeah, we settled down in 2004.
So did your CV translate to Hollywood? Did people care about what you did? No, okay.
Not at all. It was just embarrassing. I mean,
yeah.
300 episodes of TV. No one, it was really interesting. I learned a lot then, because no one would even ask you about, 300 episodes of TV. Like, okay. That's what Hollywood is. That it's almost meaningless, right? If it's not made in Hollywood, right? That's
right. Yeah.
So I got started producing. I did a couple crappy documentaries and this and that. And then that's when this agency had said it had been keeping an eye on my career and asked me for some advice. And they said, we think you could revamp our theatrical department, which is TV in Hollywood. That means TV and film, and of course theater if it comes up, but it won't. So that's how I started at I'm not going to say the name of the agency, but because and so 15 years there is when you really, you're working your way up slowly, because we're what you call like a C grade agency. Somebody like Tom Cruise has an A grade agent, and there's like, that's Gersh and C.
Is he CAA?
CAA, whatever. Okay, so that's A grade, right? Then comes sort of the B grade, which you just be like who would be the guys you see on series all the time that you can never remember the name. Billy Gardell's agent, okay, would be like a B grade agent, right? And then I'd be like a C grade agent, where I have a lot of maybe 2 or 3 or 4 series regular clients, a lot of really top guest stars, and then a bunch of bread and butter sort of, day players. Okay. So
So who are some of the people? Who are some of the people that people might recognize that were part of that agency?
I mean, clients.
Yeah, clients.
Let me just say some shows instead of their names. Is that all
Okay,
right?
sure,
Okay, they would be
sure.
series regulars on like HBO's Our Flag Means Death. That's a new show by that came out in the 2019, or Narcos Mexico, for example, or Mindhunter by David Fincher, right? That's
Right.
Fincher. Interesting. He does his own casting, Fincher. Like he works with a specific casting director. She's always the same one, and she just brings us up. So I had a lot of people not only on the show as a series regular, but also as guest stars and small co-stars on that show, because Fincher liked my people a lot. I was like the best of this. I was like the best of the C grade agents. Okay. So I'm sort of right there on the tipping point, where I'm, I'm not, I still can get enough juice that I could, you get called by casting directors to see your clients because they know that your clients can do a good audition. That's the key. If your clients know how to do a good audition, they don't mind putting them in there along with other big stars. So they might be in that. My clients are going, they're like, oh my God, so-and-so was there and so-and-so was there. But because the cast director knows I'm going to get a good tape out of Lyle's clients, I'm going to call them back again to give a big range. You know what I mean? So while they probably had no shot at all at the role, they get to hand Fincher 10. Well, they did have a shot because they got a Fincher show, but they would then be in the mix, right? And then we get a call back maybe. And so Fincher liked our clients because they were always off book. They were, I have a great eye for talent. That's one of probably my only real talent, is that I know talent and I'm never wrong. That's probably my key to success. That was it, or was my key to success.
That's an important skill. I'm looking at David Fincher's his catalog of work. I didn't realize that he was a big time music video director.
Yeah, I didn't. I was only like recently, like in the last 2 or 3 years, I was like, he's got started in the music video stuff. That's right. Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking at his output here, and he does the Hooters and Mark Knopfler and Loverboy and Foreigner and Sting and Madonna and Steve Winwood. I mean, this guy cut his teeth on freaking MTV.
Yeah, he is what I call a reality creator.
Cradle of Love, Billy Idol.
Yeah, who really was a culture creator, somebody like David Lynch, or who's another one, other creepy ones, Stanley Kubrick, right? Who really does create the world that we live in, which is creepy, but it's true. They really do. That people really do mimic film. I mean,
right.
It's like even your behaviors. I've known people. I go, who does this guy? And I'll see, people who they mold their lives around TV characters I used to love James Rockford, for example. I love James Garner, watching the Rockford.
Oh, Jim Garner was the best.
Yeah. So I'd catch myself going like, oh, I learned that from Jim Garner, didn't I? James Garner. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's funny. Robin, who's a buddy and a friend of the show, we text a lot, and we went through a kind of about 8 or 9 text exchange about Rockford and the Rockford Files, and that was a Stephen Cannell production.
Yep.
And freaking Stephen Cannell owned TV and action series in Hollywood for over 2.5 decades.
Yeah, it was the guy. I mean, Rockford Files, that show was probably what got me into show business, to be honest.
Yeah.
I hate to do this to you guys, but it is pouring rain here, and I've got a bunch of squirrel friends I didn't give in there. I'd like to help them out during the rain.
Are you going to take a squirrel break right now?
I'm just going to throw out a handful of raw, unsalted almonds.
So you're going to find out that Lyle is a squirrel whisperer.
There's that's what Elliot looks like now.
Where's your posse? Where's your squirrel posse?
They're there. I think you can see one. Oh, there's one right
Oh
there.
yeah, there he is.
One of them. There's like three out here. I'm gonna be
So
frightened.
is that your totem? One of your totems, a squirrel?
Oddly enough, I don't think it is. Coyote and hummingbird is what I like.
Yeah, you and I have had some hummingbird discussions. Do you get much coyote sightings there in your?
Oh my God, I have coyote friends. I have Kiyoshauki, who I named after the Aztec moon goddess. Koyoshauki is a female coyote who lived here. I knew her; she was a puppy, and since I've known her, she's had 5 litters. And she, if you ever look at my Twitter page, I think it's Coyotl 2021. You will see that little coyote in the circle. That's her. That's a picture of her. And she comes and drink.
I've seen that picture. So that's when you're coyote pals.
And she's we don't have a relation because they're wild and they're very vicious. But she will come up nearby me and knows she won't run when she sees me. But I leave her water and food during the mating season. And coyote, during the mating, the pregnancy season, what's the word you use? But anyway, when they have pups, they become very vicious, and like all my neighbors have had a cat eaten or whatever by them.
Right.
So I will leave her some dog treats to make her a little bit less aggressive, now and then.
So how do you mediate the relationship between the coyotes and the squirrels? That's what
the coyote usually comes out. The smart ones survive, but they're never at the same place at the same time, because the squirrels will spot the coyote way in advance. In fact, sometimes I know Koyoshauki, the coyote, is there because the squirrels are making a specific sound, which I've learned the different sounds for different animals. That's
right.
And they have different sounds for a cat, for a coyote, and for a rat or a big rat or something.
Well, that's pretty sophisticated.
Yeah.
Do they have a sound for you? Do you have your own sound with them?
No, it's just silent, and they start jumping on me and scratching. But yeah, so we did. Do we want to talk about the Oscars coming up and Chris Rock?
Yeah. So I just want to again establish that you were in an agency for 15 years, so you were on the front lines, seeing a lot of this stuff, and from the client side, from the studio side. And there's probably, clearly there's things that you've seen that we probably can't get into, but we're going to get into some territory that we can. And one of the things that you brought up was this whole thing with Chris Rock, and it was kind of interesting when you, it all came about because I was talking about Woody Harrelson, and you said, well, this is what was happening with Woody Harrelson, and this is how it broke down. This is where it was going.
We could even start with Woody Harrelson, actually.
Well, let's see where we are in the PDF.
I did a little outline for Robert. So in case we had nothing to talk about, which is insane, because Robert.
Okay, so let's look on the PDF side. What do I have?
Do you have the graphics? Can we put anything up?
Well, I have everything you sent me on the PDF. I'm just going to open the PDF. And so let's start with the Chris Rock thing.
Yeah.
And then
Rock, he just came out with his comedy special 1 hour, which is kind of a jip, where he addresses the slap, right? So that just came out last week.
Right. So I would play it, but I'd probably get a copyright strike.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And now he claims in his stand-up that it happened, it was real, and he was pissed, right? That's kind of the gist of the whole thing with the stand-up. But you have broken this down, and clearly there's something else going on here, right?
Yeah, here's the thing, which this is what's so fascinating about Hollywood, and I'd almost like to say that what's going to be kind of revealing to some people, but like I said, you have quite a sophisticated audience, is that Hollywood is a top-down organization, and it just comes from the top down, and everybody who works there, not only are their salaries and incomes and livelihoods dependent on it, but they know how to fall into line. to the point where when I saw this slap, instantly I can see that it's a stun slap. I mean, it's that obvious. And it's a classic stun slap as well. And a lot of people don't know this, but Chris Rock and Will Smith used to do TikTok videos where they would set up scenarios like, I'm here playing golf with my friend Chris Rock, and Chris, check out my I got a new set of clubs, I got a new driver or something like that. Hey, and there's Will Smith with the driver. Hey, Chris, come on over, I want to show you my new driver, right? Yeah, okay, check this out. I'm gonna go long way. And he swings the driver back and boom, and knocks Chris Rock out. Oh shit, and it looked really well done. So they would plan, and they had other ones where they'd punch each other or hit each other, smack. So they had a history of doing, these are all, I tried to find them the other day, but they're wiped. But they were TikTok videos of them doing stun slaps as pranks to each other, right?
Right.
So that's why that was a first indication, because I had seen those videos on TikTok, they were on Twitter via TikTok. And so when you see this slap, okay, let me just show you this one time. If you can't go this hand pivot, okay. The first giveaway, right, is that Will Smith's hand is open.
Right.
One. Two is that you will notice, all right, how his hand is open and Will Smith pivots his hips. Okay. Oh, you can see it. Oh, so people can see what I'm seeing, right?
Here, yeah. So I'm going to bring this other JPEG up here. It's inside the PDF, but this is the one in the JPEGs you sent me, right? So
look at Chris Rock's left heel. Okay, that's on your right. Chris Rock's left heel, and it's right on that white line.
Yep.
If you play back this video in slow motion, not even slow motion, as Will Smith is approaching, Chris Rock steps forward, and you see him look down, and he raises his left foot almost 6 inches and plants his heel right on the white line. Okay, you can see his heel, his right heel on the white line.
Yeah.
And when Will Smith walks up, you see him Will Smith plants his right ball of his right foot, the toe on that other purpley line. And you can see that right there, right?
Yeah.
Okay, the right foot, okay? Not necessarily the left foot, okay? Right. So what you've done there,
right there. Yeah, okay.
That's right. And it's right there. So you're halfway through the swing right now. So, and then Chris Rock clearly doesn't move because he doesn't get hit, right?
Yep.
Will Smith steps up. Will Smith looks down, okay? He does it well because he's one of the greatest actors of all time and the greatest stunt actors of all time, next to Tom Cruise, maybe, right?
Yep.
Down, plants his right toe, and you'll see him raise his body up and pivot his hips, and his hand comes across, open hand like this, slowly across Chris Rock's face. And of course, everybody in your audience understands angles, and we can see how we've all done pretend slaps with our friends, and done that, right? So
I'm going to do something. Hold on. Here we go, and we can put them side by side.
Yeah. Oh, good. You're good. So the hand pivots. Will Smith rises up. He doesn't step into the punch, right, or the slap.
Right.
He just rises up. His hand swings across. Okay. And you can even see in the picture on your left here on Robert's screen, right? You can see the cuff. Okay, you can see Chris Rock's tuxedo shirt.
Yep. Yeah.
And the white cuff of a Will Smith's hand is already past the face of Chris Rock. And
that's interesting.
Chris Rock's face has not moved at all.
That's really interesting. You can see it right here, and it's on the other side of his face.
That's right. And I think that Chris Rock's that Will Smith's hand is right about there at this time. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And so he might even just brush with his fingertips, Chris Rock's chin, and that's when Chris Rock moves his head. And in fact, even when you practice yourself at home right now and do yourself a punch to your own face, you will notice that when you go boom, your face will move after the hand passes, and you'll follow it. You'll see yourself go even before. So that's the classic stunt slap, all right? And they're both on their marks. Will Smith pivots his hips, rises up for action, for motion, And he knows, and believe me, Will Smith knows how to do this, whips the tail of his jacket around for more dramatic effect, all right? And then rings his hand in a big sweeping motion downward for more effect, to make a big boom, boom action, Jackie Chan kind of move, right?
Right.
So that is without a doubt. And this is what's crazy. When I walk into the agency the next day, I'm like, are you guys buying this slap? Everybody was like, of course it's real. Of course it is. And I'm thinking, here I am with other Hollywood TV and film professionals, and nobody will even question that the slap was a stunt slap and not a real slap.
Yeah, so that's an interesting kind of reality in and of itself, right? Like they live in a land of illusion, but they don't. Do you think it's because they live in a land of illusion that they have to buy into the illusion at every level? Is that what you think?
I would say yes. And in fact, if we get into politics, for example, it's just bizarre. I mean, we've all seen how people use talking points and how the media uses talking points, and they're clearly given from somewhere up top, and every single network can use repeat the same talking point. Hollywood is even worse. I mean, you got to be like on the same page right away.
Right.
And so the clincher, okay, the capper on this one is the next couple of days, the producer of those Oscars where the slap happened, by the way, the greatest night in TV, as Chris Rock describes it, the slap heard around the world. Producer of the Oscars, Will Packer, is interviewed by Good Morning America, I think it is, right? And Packer says, the interviewer asked the producer, Packer, what we're going to do, we're going to take any action, what were your feelings about this? Packer, we heard and the interviewer says, we heard the LAPD was there and they were ready to do something. And Will Packer says that, quote, I've got the quote right here, that's an absolute fact. The LAPD made it clear that we will do whatever you want us to do. And one of the options is that we will go and arrest him right now. Now, think about that. He says it's an absolute fact. I couldn't ask for more than this. Now, here's the key. California and Los Angeles County are what are called no violence, no tolerance state. They have a zero tolerance state. So, for example, if a woman calls and says, my husband's beating me, get over here, help me, he's crazy. The police arrive to the door. She opens the door and says, oh, it's okay. We got out of hand. We've been drinking. I'm sorry.
No, they got to take somebody away.
That's exactly right. It doesn't matter who says what. If she presses charges or doesn't press charges, is irrelevant. There's now evidence that a crime took place and that she said the husband hit her. That guy, his husband, is going to be put in handcuffs no matter what.
That's right.
Okay? Yeah. So, and Will Packer is trying to tell you that the LAPD knows a crime happened, saw the crime happened, has video evidence of the crime happening, of violence, and they gave this guy a choice. And he's stating it on TV, major network TV. LAPD gave us a choice. Chris Rock has been quoted as saying he didn't want to press charges. Doesn't happen in California. Once it happens, you're going. So that's the key, that that this is legally, professionally, as an industry person. You can see it's fake. You can see it's a stunt slap, and we know legally it didn't happen, because if it had happened in real IRL, Will Smith would have been arrested.
So let's look at the context of this, because the context, I think, is important. What brought him up there was Chris Rock making a joke about Jada. That's what brought Will Smith up there. And Jada's laughing, Will's laughing, and all of a sudden that stops. And he starts to, get your wife's name out of my mouth and all this bullshit, right? And at the same time, he's also going to get an Oscar for playing Richard Williams, who's the father of the Williams sisters, right? So you have this kind of, stereophonic effect of this guy who's defending the honor of his daughters, right? And then you have this guy who's defending the honor of his wife. And he goes up there and then he does this. And so what is the message here? Is Will Smith defending his queen? But the fallout for Will Smith from this was not great, right? Like he had to kind of grovel and apologize.
A little bit,
and, yeah. And so I'd like your take on that. Like, was this kind of a setup so that Will Smith looks like he's not a cuck? Because he clearly on the, what is it, the red table or red couch or whatever that show is, like he gets cucked out big time by Jada, right? Big time. So
that's right. Yeah, I forgot about
so
that.
is this an opportunity for him to redeem his cuckery and at the same time, defend his queen? Like, what do you think that this is ultimately about? We know we have a fake slap, but what is this about?
That's, I'm going to guess that your take would be as good or better than mine, because I will say right away that the paradigm of the idea, the comparison that you just made, the character he played, Will Smith played in the movie, was the protector, and the character he played the doctor is the protector and the defender.
Right.
He even says that himself in his acceptance speech. If you want to kill yourself and listen to that stupid acceptance speech again, where he gets the Oscar, he actually says, "I'm playing this role." He, the father, he's the protector. He drives that home, right? Then there's some commentary the next day about how could he have been so into his role that as being a protector that he wanted to continue that, So it could be, and as all our conspiracy theorist pals know, these operations, these psychological operations, are always multifaceted, right? So one, you're promoting the movie, okay?
Yep.
Two, the Oscar numbers of the Oscar, metrics are dropping like huge every year. No one's watching, right?
Right.
Bring action back. It's much like the Apollo missions, right? People getting bored watching some guy in a fake video jumping around in slow motion, right? And so they got to just do something to make it exciting. And I think it was Apollo 17. They almost didn't make it back.
Right.
So suddenly everyone's glued to the TV again about the moon, when they kind of got phased out from the moon, right? So this brings your attention back to the Oscars. Three, he is like you suggest, Will Smith is uncucked. Okay. To me, he looked more like a cuck, like he was doing his wife's bidding, if you ask me. But anyway.
Well, I'd agree with you, but it's interesting. I watch enough Jason Whitlock to be a little conversant in this, right? So there's this kind of underlying theme in Black relationships where women have risen to the level of being queens, right? I mean, this is the whole queen thing going on.
Well, it used to be a lot like that. It's less nowadays, but yes.
Oh, no. Oh, it is big time. You just tune into Jason Whitlock a little bit. You'll see.
Oh, yeah. In the Hollywood world, for sure it is. Yeah.
So, but in order to do that, in that world, men have taken on this kind of tertiary, role. And even like with Jada and Will, he plays this tertiary role in the promotion of her.
Oh, you're talking about the men being the cuck.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, gotcha. Very good.
But I think this is kind of an attempt to recodify like a cuck with purpose, or a cuck with strength, or a cuck with loyalty, right? They're kind of, they're trying. I really feel, this is just my 2 cents here, that they're trying to rebrand like the image of the Black male as somebody who's strong and a protector of their queen, right? This is what I'm seeing here.
Which I would be on all with that Psyop, because I'm from the south side of Chicago, and my mom's from the Southwest originally, but I grew up in an all Black neighborhood until I was like 11. Then I moved to a mixed neighborhood after that. But I watched as rap music and all this just destroyed, respect for women in the Black community. And I mean, most Black men at the time were saying this is abhorrent. They didn't like that at all,
Right.
So, so,
And I'm with you, but again, it's staged,
yeah, stage,
right?
yeah,
It's a whole staged operation, which is not organic. And the other thing I was thinking about when I saw this is there was a time in Hollywood where the Oscars kind of carried an air of danger about them. Like you never knew who was going to show up or not show up or what they were going to say. And of course, the classic example was Sachin Littlefeather getting up there and not accepting actually, the Oscar for Marlon Brando. And like, that's just totally left field, stuff like that would happen. And turns out that Sachin Littlefeather wasn't even Native American, but that's a whole other story. And then you had Vanessa Redgrave that one time, like denouncing Zionism, at the Oscars. I'm like,
She was
holy
denouncing it?
Yeah. She was like,
Wow.
I'm like, holy shit, right?
Wow.
Vanessa Redgrave is denouncing Zionism and the Zionist occupation of Israel. Then you have George C. Scott, who won't show up and accept his Oscar for Patton for obvious reasons. I mean, the Oscars had this kind of inherent danger sort of built into them for a while, but this is just stage danger. There's nothing dangerous about it.
Yeah, that is Vanessa Redgrave. Ooh, that's a good one. So besides being an aficionado of music, sports, you also really know your Hollywood stuff too, I gotta say.
A little bit. What's really interesting is I don't think I was doing this in order to like prep for our show, but I've been watching the introduction to the Oscars for the last week on YouTube, because that's all you could see, like the Academy of Arts and Film. They won't release the entire Oscars. They'll just release the openings, right? So I've been watching the openings of the Oscars for the past week, and it was really a glamorous operation. Really, and it was an operation, and and everybody kind of knows now what was going on to a certain degree behind the scenes. But make no mistake about it, I mean, it was a really big deal.
Yeah.
And even at the beginning, they would take somebody like Elmer Bernstein, and the orchestra there would run through a score of a number of the songs that were nominated for best song, right? They'd get that out of the way, kind of bring people.
Yeah.
They had this big orchestra pit and everything, and it was it was a much bigger deal then than it is now. But yeah, this is interesting. The other thing too that I noticed about this when it first happened is, and this is one of the things that you and I think are going to talk about, is it looks like this is a portal behind him.
Oh yeah.
You've got this whole arch. And then down here, you've got like the, kind of your classic kind of Enochian circle of magic, right? There's something going on here as well. There's something else going on here that is a little transcendent of just this slap. So did you know Chris Rock at all when you were an agent?
No, I've seen Chris Rock from a distance once. That's it. I've never met him.
Yeah. These guys feel like Freemasons to me.
Yeah.
They've got like Freemasonic vibe. Right.
Totally. I mean, our ally and friend Christopher Knowles has a great quote, which is, the world is run by sorcery, not science. Once you grasp this fact, it's a tough pill to swallow, but once you grasp this fact, life will become a whole lot more easier. Because I mean, it's sorcery at the highest levels. Yeah, I mean,
it really is sorcery at the highest levels. It was really funny. I was talking to a client yesterday, and and I don't know how we came about it, but I said, could you imagine a world where instead of somebody saying trust the science, they would say trust the magic.
Yeah.
Trust the magic.
Well, if you
So
think about that, out on the limb and all that, those, the new age movement, that's what they're saying, trust the magic, right?
right. But instead we get trust the science, which is kind of a step down and corporatized version of magic in a lot of ways.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think not just my feeling, but in general, at the Secret Sun Institute, for example, or your gang on the 15 Minutes of Flame, I think they pretty much agree that science is, when they say trust the science, they mean have faith in the scientism. The Church of Scientology. It's literally Scientology. I mean, it's no longer the science. Quite frankly, is a method of investigation. All right, that's it. That's all it is. There's no dogma in it at all. There's zero dogma in science. And I'm fortunate to grow up in the scientific community in the University of Chicago. I was literally born in the University of Chicago. My father's a world famous medical research scientist and a physician, and my mother's a data manager in Chester Oncology. They're retired now, but I really grew up and the idea, hearing this in the 70s or 60s would be preposterous. You would never, the idea of that, having your ideas challenged, and you would never say it's just. I mean, look at the food pyramid alone is like on its head now, right?
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
Exactly.
they used to tell you that smoking was good for you. I mean,
well, in a weird way, it even might be, right? Like with nicotine and the nicotinoids and all the other stuff that.
I mean, you had nothing. Anything abused is going to be bad, right? I still hand roll at least 1 or 2 cigarettes a day. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. There's a movie with Kevin Sorbo, who played was it Hercules? Was that he was his Hercules? So Kevin Sorbo, there's a movie with Kevin Sorbo where he plays a detective. It's kind of a noir movie. I've never seen it. I've only seen clips of it. But he's like a detective that slips into an alternate like Earth. And in the alternate Earth, magic has replaced science and everything is based on magic.
Oh, yeah. I know what you mean. Okay, yeah. It's really, it's actually, it's in Hollywood, right? The movie. I've seen that movie. I love it. Yeah. I forgot Kevin Sorbo was in that. That's right. Yeah.
So you recommend that, huh?
I thought it was kind of revealing,
Yeah.
Like the movie You've Got to See Under the Silver Lake.
Yeah. We should talk
By the way, I live in
that.
Silver Lake. I can see the lake from our dining room window. And the Hollywood sign you've got there.
No, you're in the epicenter. You're in the epicenter of the magic.
Yeah, it is a magical portal-y kind of place. That was, my wife and I were looking at the settlements of Tongva Indians who lived here. And Tongvas are Uto-Aztecans, right? I mean, in the same language group as Aztecs and Utes. From Utah all the way down to Central Mexico is all the same language group, right? And so we were just saying, like, my God, the amount of people that used to live, we live on top of some other culture. I mean, it's just like completely, it's been wiped over. I mean, there's still some places you can see a little bit remaining, but at least the slopes where people actually did live. But it's and even then, I'm really into Tataria stuff now. You turn me on to some great channels. What's the fellow that you watch?
Oh, John Levi.
John Levi, yeah. So you got me into that, and I'm telling you, man, you'll remember that my ancestors, the Aztecs, told the conquistadors, when they asked who built this, they said, we don't know. It's built by giants long before we were.
Right, because the Aztecs, they just kind of occupied that territory.
Cholulu and Teotihuacan were these pyramids were not the people who the conquistadors met were not the people who built those pyramids.
That's right. That is common historical knowledge. Like, that's not made up.
Yeah,
that's not a reach. Yeah, that's really
Aztecs came quite late to Central Mexico. I think it was probably
absolutely
during that drought, the big drought they had in the Southwest that lasted for almost 300 years. I think that drought lasted, and they moved from the Southwest. So that's why, Apaches, Cherokees, Yaqui, especially, Utes, even, they're all the same people who, and a certain group moved from Aztlan. We're not exactly sure where Aztlan is. It's a mythical place underground. Moved underground, by the way, interesting, right? We came out of the earth and then migrated down to what is it? Tenochtitlan, and Yeah.
Well, this gets into the whole Hopi cosmology of the first world, the second world, the third world, right? And the ant people, they just keep moving up to these different levels. They're literally coming up out of the earth, in the Hopi cosmology.
That's right. That's right. Hopi.
Yeah. So let's talk a little about the Woody Harrelson thing, because you had some commentary on that. And
It's classic. Yeah.
yeah, so what's your take on? I mean, for me, I watched it. We talked about it on my show, and maybe I didn't see the entire thing, but I thought I did. And it was like, okay, feels pretty flat, and you actually had to get it approved by Lorne Michaels or whoever is sitting in for Lorne Michaels. So it's not like Dave Chappelle where he did a switcheroo, and it's like, I'm going to do one bit and I'm going to switch it up and do another bit. So what was your take on the whole Woody Harrelson thing?
This is to me, it's almost the perfect example of a controlled opposition. Like you can, and your sophisticated audience is well aware of how a controlled op works. But what's beautiful about the Woody Harrelson one is that it's almost like a pristine example if you've ever wanted to show somebody what a controlled opposition is. Because one, I mean, just intuitively, we all know that, right? Okay. But we kind of, even I do this too, memory hole stuff very quickly, right? I know it is, and my argument for why it is going to drift away from me after time, but we know that it is, right? So one is that he's a Hollywood insider. He's the big cheese, okay? I mean, this is one of the biggest stars in the world, okay? And this is the guy who did Natural Born Killers and the JFK. I mean, and then you've got an actor whose dad is involved in the assassination of JFK as well.
Oh yeah,
the mystery of it. I mean, you can't get any deeper Masonic stuff than that. I mean, and his dad actually ended up killing a judge, right?
Killed a judge here in Texas, yeah.
Right there, shot him on the. Was he? He was in the courtroom, right?
Yeah.
So this guy is like I forget who says it. Illuminati confirmed. Oh, it's Mark. Mark at my podcast. My family thinks I'm crazy. Illuminati confirmed. So you've got that. Then what people don't grasp is that the average person, not your audience, don't grasp is that one. No script gets written, okay, for Hollywood without it being, in your show without the producer knowing what's going to be said.
Right.
Two, NBC is definitely giving approval of monologues. There's just no two ways about that. Three, the monologue in Saturday Night Live, I think they do it just for old time's sake to make it cool. They still write the monologue out on gigantic cards with a Sharpie marker, okay? I think it's kind of cool, I suppose, instead of having a teleprompter, right?
Right.
They have a card, and the guy pulls a card puller, and they pull the next card. And after watching 15 years of actors' audition tapes, I'm a certified expert in this. I mean, I'm telling you, there's no doubt in his pentameter of his voice. I can see the way his eyes are slightly moving. I can even see the whiteboard in his eyeball, okay? He's reading this off these giant whiteboard cards that are being pulled away from him. So that alone is that he's reading a script approved by the producer and approved by the network, okay?
Right.
Then, if you really, and it took me a minute to figure this one out, but if you watch the whole segment, which is 7 minutes long, at minute 1:36 seconds, begins the setup for the punchline, which is what he's being attacked for, okay?
Right.
Because the punchline is, all the Hollywood script said all the cartels got together and they bought up advertising and TV and put you all in your homes, and then the only way to get out of your home was to take their drugs again and again and again. And I was like, that's so crazy. No one's ever going to believe this. And I threw it away, right? That's the punchline, right?
Yeah.
Which he set up for 5.5 minutes. So he didn't go off script. I mean, he begins that punchline of what that script is, right?
Yeah.
And so that right away, the whole thing is written out there for him. But here's why it's a classic controlled op, is that the punchline is that these shady drug cartels, which are so big, right? And the smoke-filled rooms of, smoke-filled laboratories, whatever, right? Got together and put you in your, the drug company didn't put you in your home, right? The government did, right?
Good point. Yeah.
Right? You know,
Yeah,
so you're
that's a
now
really
giving
good point.
you're giving the government the pass, right? To they didn't just put you in your home. You had to take it to keep your job. So he
Right.
skips the keep your job part. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. Three, he kind of gave the network a bit, it's sort of brushed over fast, but he does mention the drug companies bought up all the networks or TV, right? I think he
Right.
said that, right?
Yeah.
But what you have is you don't have the government culpable anymore, right? You don't have all the bad science culpable anymore. It's these shady, drug cartels,
Right. Yeah.
drug or something, right?
Yeah.
So it's still going to be put far away from your experience, which is that your employer was under pressure from Gavin Newsom and from the mayor of Los Angeles, who was telling you to snitch out your neighbors if you had a party of more than 3 people or something, right?
Yeah.
Snitches don't get stitches anymore; they get rewards. That's a quote from the mayor, right? So
That's right. So what happened to him? What happened to the mayor? Like, I have not seen that guy for
now Karen Bass is the mayor.
right, but Richard, what's his name?
God, I can't talk about memory holding, right?
So he was everywhere.
Garcia.
Now he's nowhere, and it was the same thing with Garcetti.
Garcetti, yeah, he was my neighbor.
Garcetti.
He was our neighbor for 2 years when he was mayor. Just half a block away.
So the weird thing, okay, so the weird thing about Garcetti is that he kind of mirrors what happened with Stephen Adler, who's the mayor of Austin, and they were both really outspoken, and were putting the hammer down on their populace to get jacked up, and then all of a sudden Adler's nowhere. Like, I didn't see Stephen Adler. He was everywhere, and then he was nowhere, and then I think he ran for re-election, but he didn't even really campaign. Like, where did this guy go? And Garcetti is the same way, right? Like, everybody's thinking, oh man, Garcetti's moving up. He's got to take on Newsom. This is his platform. He's everywhere. But then he goes radio silent, and he just goes away too. It's like really weird.
Well, you remember that who else got a golden parachute and just jumped off the face of the earth is Cuomo. I mean, Cuomo was running nursing home extermination camps.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. I mean, this is where we're talking full on what I call inter-Nazi scientism. God, I hope we don't get banned for that. But yeah, it's international socialist science, being reused. Where these old people were being put into these things, and they're being intubated instantly, being kept. It's a stress this puts on a 92-year-old. I mean, forget it.
Oh no, it's terrible.
That's what it's called, sinicide or geronticide.
Geronticide, that's right.
Geronticide, sinicide is how killing off your senior citizens, right? For the sake of saving more for the rest of the tribe, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, so Cuomo got the golden parachute. He's out. Garcetti might be just laying low till after the pandemic dies out. The other one who's disappeared, if you'll notice this, besides the book she wrote, Michelle Obama is out of the picture for almost 2 years now. Did you ever see Michelle Obama do come on, trust the science, jab up, and she wasn't in that campaign, which is odd, right? Because that's why I think she was taken out to keep her clean, because I think that they're going to run Michelle in what is the next election, 2024?
I don't know. I
can see bookmarking her, yeah.
Well, so the Q people will tell you that she's dead. That's what.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
that's what Now, what's interesting about the Q people, we're going a little off script here, but what's interesting about the Q people is that they've been reporting that Hillary is dead. And I thought the original Hillary died in 2016. That's my theory, right? That happened on 9/11 when she collapsed on her way into the.
Oh, right, I remember that.
Yeah. So whoever was this other version of Hillary that we've seen since 2016, whoever that was, but what's really interesting about that statement is that I haven't seen Hillary for a while, right?
Yeah.
So You
But
haven't
was
seen
she
Hillary?
just in the news like yesterday or 2 days ago?
Well, but I haven't really seen her though.
Yeah, that's right. And she was in the total deep fake mode too. It was her in a solid colored jacket against a
Right.
plain black background when she
Yeah.
did whatever she appeared in. I remember thinking like, this looks like this could be a deep fake. I didn't say it looks
No,
like.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's get back to your career. And
Oh,
now,
one more thing about, can we cap off one thing about Woody Harrelson?
yeah,
Is that the Harrelson is the controlled op is someone where he's not going to go rogue after getting the accolades for going rogue. Okay. So in other words, Harrelson has not been canceled. It came and went in 48 hours, the story. So that's how the controlled opposition means.
that's a really good point. That is a really good point. Yeah.
So it's not like he got canceled and then he's suddenly, it's like Bill Maher got canceled for saying the right thing and now he's back on TV on HBO, right? But
yeah,
so that's what a controlled op is. You can control Woody, you control what he's going to say afterwards, and he didn't come out and stick by his guns or become the next anti-vax, component. Which and by the way, I would really recommend. I shouldn't give me medical explanation. Okay, but yeah, that's a classic example of a controlled op. That's why the Woody Harrelson would be the perfect example I would give anybody of how a controlled op works.
good. That was good. And I like the fact that you framed it in that it came and went, and he's suffered zero consequences out of any of it. Yeah, good job. All right, so I wanted to ask you, when you were operating in the agency, when you were working with people, did you ever witness one of your clients, or maybe perhaps somebody else's client, go to the dark side? Right? Did you ever see somebody change before your very eyes, and then all of a sudden go from being a C+ to a B+ to an A? Did you ever witness that?
I never saw someone go to A, and I'll tell you why. And why nobody will ever see that is because the A's are chosen at, I think, at pre-birth even. But I mean, the A's are
there's a lot of evidence around that.
Yeah, I mean, they're marked, and not, you got to keep in mind these people are super talented people. Okay, there's some of the actors I think are some of the greatest. So the actors I dislike the most personally, but they're who was I don't know, I can't remember who invented this phrase. I don't want to take credit for it, but they are lifetime actors, that they're in this role from the very beginning. Their backgrounds are squeaky clean and they're untouchable, right?
Well, some of them have weird backgrounds too, though. Like Tom Cruise's background is weird.
Oh, tell me, what do you find weird about him?
There's a lot of just broken pieces around his background. He's got that half brother. What is his name? Mapother, or he's another actor.
Really?
Yeah, and Tom Cruise's background is just strange, and how quickly he gets his start in acting.
Yeah. Sure.
And how fast his career just takes off, right? Like he gets that role in Taps, and then he's just off and running, right? Taps, Risky Business, and then but he's got kind of a weird background, a bit of a broken home. There's no real sense of a father in Tom. You don't really get like a lot of Tom Cruise prehistory.
Yeah. Well, that's my point. Is that the backgrounds are hard to find. There's a scrub before they even begin, right? I mean,
another one who has a really weird background is Keanu Reeves.
Yeah.
Who's Canadian, right? He's Canadian.
Yeah. And by the way, notice how they import the agents from overseas, right? So that's going to also have a big block and stuff too.
And his father has been in prison for most of his life, and I think Keanu Reeves, even though he started off in Canada, was born in Lebanon, right? Yeah. So there's all this weird stuff around Keanu Reeves.
Lebanon is like agent grooming ground central. I mean, Lebanon is it's there, right? Is it Beirut? I'm thinking of.
Well, Beirut is in Lebanon.
Yeah, Beirut's in Lebanon, right? Of course.
Yeah,
that's right. Of course. So in fact, what's his name? Who allegedly shot John Lennon? He went to Beirut just before a coup happened there, right? I mean, bits before some giant. He was actually in Beirut.
Right.
And then he was in some other place where Obama was in Hawaii,
You mean
it's
Mark
like
David
Beirut.
Chapman? Mark
Oh,
David
and don't
Chapman.
forget, I think that even Obama's mom went to a elitist girls' school in Beirut.
That's interesting because also Steve Kerr, who's the coach of the Golden State Warriors, his father Malcolm Kerr was killed in Beirut.
Wow.
He was teaching at the American school, the international school in Beirut, and Steve Kerr has come out and become a rabid anti-gun, anti-Second Amendment guy.
Oh yeah,
Anytime,
I remember you showed that show. I was like, it was pukey. I mean, it was cringy, man. His anti-gun stuff.
it
Right?
was totally
I think
cringy.
Obama's mom went to some school in Israel. Anyway, it's somewhere back in the Middle East, right?
No, there were a lot of spooks in Beirut. It's
Yeah.
like that's where a lot of spooks hung out. And then you get into like Stuart Copeland of the police.
Oh yeah, it's just
And his father's an operative, right? And they spent time there. They spent time in Beirut,
yeah.
right? So yeah,
What
Beirut.
was it you mentioned the other day? Is it you got the police? What do they got? Alphabet letters for everything. FBI, which is one of their labels is
Well, there was IRS records.
IRS records, right?
Yeah, IRS. That was the Copeland's label.
But there's another Copeland operation that has an anagram FBI, but it's not FBI. They don't make a point of it.
His brother Miles that guy was a shark. This total shark. Man, if you ever want to see a shark manager at work, just watch that movie Bring on the Night with Sting. And he's Sting's agent, and he talks about how the guys in the band, Daryl Jones and Omar Hakim, Kenny Kirkland, they come to him and they say, hey, we want more money. We want more money because we're bringing, all this music to Sting, and he's tapping into our kind of jazz intelligentsia. We want more money. And he looked at him and he said, here's the pie. This is your part of the pie, right? If I were to say tomorrow that we're going to have all four of you guys play here on this stage in Paris, how many people do you think would show up? And I'm going to do the same thing for Sting, and how many people do you think are going to show up? Yeah, your pie slices are much different. So he's basically just shut the fuck up and take the money, right? The way that he tells it is very unemotional, right? The guy's just totally unemotional.
Obama, by the way, is another one, a lifetime actor.
Yeah,
He's set up from the very beginning. Yeah.
Well, that seems to be the whole Obama thing is just really weird.
He was my neighbor in Chicago too, by the way. Lived only a block and a half away.
So is that when he was living with Michael?
No, the house that he, we were on the south side and moved slowly a bit, which is like 8 blocks, makes a huge difference in Chicago, right? We managed 8 blocks up to a rich Jewish black neighborhood, right? And that neighborhood was like the place you had to live. It's called Kenwood, Hyde Park, Kenwood. Hyde Park was one, Kenwood's the next neighborhood. And so, yeah, so that, I mean, our neighbors were like Saul Alinsky, Obama's moved in there later on. Elijah Muhammad lived there. Then Farrakhan moved in after he was gone. Muhammad Ali, my childhood idol, moved into my neighborhood, refurbished a big mansion there, right?
Right. How far away were the Ayers? Because the Ayers lived in Chicago.
Bill Ayers also. I mean, my dad tells a story about one time he was standing in line to vote for the first Obama election, and right in front of him was Bill Ayers. And there's a picture my mom took of my dad just standing like, oh God, I'm saying.
So the Ayers were his sponsors in Chicago.
100%. I know the exact house where his announcement party took place. Yeah.
Do you know the story about the mailman?
Yeah, I heard the mailman story. That's creepy. Yeah. Tell them the story, the mailman story.
So there's around the time that Obama was getting elected, there was this guy that came out and said that he delivered mail to the Ayers, and Bill Ayers' mother would come out and talk to him about this young man that was staying with them and how special he was, and how he was going to run for president. He was going to become president one day. She kept bragging on this young man and then Ayers' old man would come out and basically tell the guy the same thing. And Ayer's old man apparently like ran the power companies, like was it electrical or something like
Oh
that?
wow, really? I didn't
Oh,
know.
oh no, he was like in the epicenter of I think electrical power in Chicago.
Because they didn't live in Hyde Park at that time, but I know what I think it was some just suburb of Chicago. The way I heard the story was that one time the mailman finally meets this young.
He eventually meets Obama, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
he eventually meets Obama. Yeah,
Hey son, what are you going to be when you grow up? I'm going to be president.
right. And I think he was college age at the time.
Yeah.
So the other interesting part of the story is that Bill Ayer's dad, tried to convince the guy who was a mailman that he was oppressed. And it's like, don't you feel oppressed?
Yeah,
Don't you feel like you're being taken advantage of? He's like, hell no, I love my job. It's like, no, get out of here with this oppressed bullshit.
It's the University of Chicago, where I grew up and was fortunate enough to go to school because was that since nursery school, by the way, I was in the University of Chicago laboratory school, right? That's what it's called. I saw the beta testing on us now. In retrospective, I see it, right? The beta testing that was done on us, all these ops we see now from were all things that were acceptable to me. I mean, I was born and raised a dyed in the wool, psycho liberal. I mean, that's how I was.
Yeah.
It wasn't
Yeah.
what turned me was the science of a man-made global warming. I was like, are you? And that made me flip to change my view of stuff. I was like, this is not even science. This is like 2002 or something. And I was full liberal. But I mean, I remember being in school, and of course, the editor of the paper is being told by the teacher of the school newspaper what to do, right? And they were trying to do a story about all the colored people in our school. A couple blacks, got a South Asian in there, an Indian, Asian girl, a Chinese girl.
So we're talking BIPOCs.
Yeah, BIPOCs, Native American, Lyle, okay, and another black kid or something. So they got the five of us, and they did an interview of us, and never occurred to me before, because my dad is white, my mom is Indian, right? Or is Native American, right?
Yeah.
So I never thought of myself as anything really. Just like when I was in Chicago, I was a white guy getting beaten up by blacks. When I live in my grandparents' house, my white grandparents' house in the summer, and work in the cornfields, I was beaten up because I was a darkie. You know what I mean? So I was always sort of back.
You couldn't win.
Back and forth. And they said to me, "Do you feel oppressed? Do you feel like you're singled out? Do you feel people are looking at you? Do they treat you differently because of your skin color?" And of course, I was much darker as a kid. Quite often when you're mixed, you're really darker as a kid. You get lighter as you get older. But I was really, looked like a little Indian nut, right? And they were trying to tell me, I was like, that I was oppressed, and I never thought of it. I thought I was living the life of Riley. And then they're taking our photograph, and they go, we were like taking our photograph for the newspaper. They're like, no, make a sad face.
Oh, wow.
And they made us make a sad face. I should have had this book. I could have pulled out and showed that yearbook. And they made us make a sad face to look oppressed.
Wow.
And this is that'd be in like 1975 or something, 76.
Yeah, I mean, when you drill down to the University of Chicago and look at the faculty and literally the programming that comes out of the University of Chicago. Like, I was an English major in college, and I remember, this whole thing called the New School of Literature and Criticism was really big.
I know the New School, yeah.
And it comes out of the University of Chicago. And as it was described to me, I thought to myself, this is insane, right?
Tell the people how it was described to you.
So when I said, well, so what is this New School stuff about? Well, basically, you have to look at the work simply as the work, right? There is no historical context for the work. So you have to interpret the work as kind of this inert thing that exists without any kind of referential relationship to anything else. And I thought to myself, there's nothing like that exists in the natural world. Everything is interconnected, right? So now you have to interpret this thing from a completely different perspective and how you're going to generally deconstruct it, right? You're going to use deconstructionism to get into the work, and then you're going to get into, critical theory, and that's how you're going to dissect the work, right? Because those are the only tools that are available to dissect the work. Unless, of course, you're going into the deep structure of language, which eventually you'll run into Chomsky with that, by the way. But, and I just thought to myself, this is completely insane. Because, how could you understand like Ezra Pound's cantos without knowing about Ezra Pound's life? Because it's littered throughout the cantos. Like, it forces you to understand the historical context, the personal context with which something is written. And the new school just comes and says, we're going to obliterate this. You're going to look at the work, and these are the tools you're going to have in order to do that, which is really postmodern critical theory. And that's what it's about.
Yeah, and that's a really excellent breakdown of it. I don't think I could have done such a good job myself of explaining it, because I was brainwashed by new school thought. I mean, that's how I went through all my university years, was in that framework of thought. I mean, I've learned more about comparative religion hanging out with you and Christopher Nolan's The Secret Sun, than I did going to...
Right. They didn't want you to connect all these dots. They didn't want you to see how things were really interconnected. And in mythology, forget mythology.
Yeah.
That's a thing of the past. You can't use that as a referential tool or a guide to understand a work, right? When I heard it, I just thought to myself, this is insane. It's completely psychotic. And if this is where academia is going, I want no part of it.
See, that's why I've got the theory that psychology, like Jungian psychology, and Chris, everyone's got in our world's got a love-hate relationship with Jung, right? I mean, there's things you go like, that's great, and then you're like, oh, that's kind of weird. But Jung and Freud, psychology replaces mythology. That's the thing that it's replacing, because they're going to say that they take the myth of Oedipus and just have no understanding of what the real, in fact,
Freud made that up anyway.
He
made the whole Oedipal theory up because he didn't want to piss off his rich clients in Vienna, because they were raping their daughters.
Yeah, exactly. This is a great David Warner Matheson, right?
Yeah.
He does a lot of work with astrology, of myth and trauma is one of his books here, and
that's Perseus with Medusa, right?
That's right. I actually saw this in person one time, but he does an incredible work and shows you how all mythologies around the world. I mean, it's amazing how the Babylonians and the Aztecs have the same fucking astrological calendar, and
it's so, these motifs show up time and again. The two motifs. There are three motifs that are kind of universal. There is a character who is sacrificed and is resurrected that shows up, right? There's a flood motif that shows up in all these cultures, and then there are the brothers, and sometimes they're full brothers and sometimes they're half brothers. Those three themes are universal, and they show up in all these different cultures and religions.
So are giants and the flood, right?
Well, the flood is part of it. The giants show up in some, not in all, but definitely the flood, the character who is sacrificed and resurrected, and the brothers. The brothers are a big theme. Like in the Hopi, you have Pokang Hoya and Pokang Loya, and they're these two brothers, and they get in trouble, right? And as they get in trouble and do these things, these creation stories are created around these brothers. And then you have Enki and Enlil from Sumeria. You have Thor and Loki in the Norse. I mean, we go on and on about this shit, right? It's the brothers theme, and usually there's a half brother that's part of the storytelling. These are universal motifs and themes, and there's a there, right? There's a there with
yeah. And not to diss Christian fundamentalists who believe Bible literacy, because I mean, it doesn't. It's not like one of these. We're not. I'm not trying to, and I don't think you are, saying that doing a what is that? Not loose change, but what's the
Zeitgeist.
zeitgeist with a discount over, it's still powerful. And to believe in this myth, and that mythology is what we do. You can choose to believe in that story. I think Miguel Conner of and Bite Radio, says create your own myth. Okay, so I'm going to create my own myth. I'm going to believe in that. That's fine too. There's no reason there's nothing more powerful than believing in your own in a myth, to actually embrace it and believe in it. And that's what I think Miguel Conner is trying to say by saying create your own myth, and live in that. I personally think you could probably just choose any one, from Batman to Perseus, and you'd be doing okay.
Yeah. How much time do we have? I've got about 20 minutes left. I wanted to touch on a little bit more about the Hollywood piece, because you and I were talking about something really interesting before we hit go, and I wanted to kind of get back there because it was so juicy. And we started off with, at least I brought it up, and it has to do with the death of Robert Blake, which happened, I think it was yesterday or the day before.
Day before yesterday.
And Robert Blake had the distinction of being the longest running and working actor in Hollywood until he passed away, right? So you go all the way back to Our Gang and the Little Rascals to the last movie he made, which is Lost Highway.
Yeah, do you remember I just turned the computer to show you the squirrels?
Yeah.
If you kept on going down that hill, you hit the river. Across that river is Frogtown, and that's where the Little Rascals Studios was, right there.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's right in your own backyard.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit next neighborhood over, but yeah.
Pretty close, right?
Yeah.
Pretty close. So, we were talking about Robert Blake a little bit, and he's such a complex character in a lot of ways, because you just, if you go back and listen to some of his interviews, he's basically telling you that he was raped and molested as a kid, right? Like he has
probably was.
Well, he was, and he has to deal with that the rest of his life, right?
Yeah.
And then he goes through this really weird thing with what's her name, Bonnie? Is it what was her name? Was it Bonnie Blakely? Is that her name? Bonnie Blakely. And he fucking kills her and gets away with it. He doesn't do it. He hires somebody to do it, but he still gets away with it.
Well, but we should mention that's our theory, right? I mean, he was proven innocent, right?
He was, but I mean, when you put all these pieces together, right? You put them all together. It really looks like there's a smoking gun with Robert Blake.
Oh yeah, I mean, in fact, I mentioned to you before we got on the air was that that was one of my meeting places. That I was at that meeting at that restaurant exactly a week before she died.
Right. So we were talking about this, and his last role is in Lost Highway, where he plays this guy called the Mystery Man. He's like totally creepy. And so when Robert Blake in his death is like the passing of an era, right? Yeah. Somebody goes all the way back to the Our Gang films and was the last living member of Our Gang.
Yep.
Right. So in a lot of ways, it's like the closing of a chapter of Hollywood with the passing of Robert Blake.
I mean, it's more than a chapter. I think it's a closing of an epoch,
Yeah. It's true.
It could be like in 2019, this is mind blowing. I got to look this up again on the internet, make sure I'm correct about the year. But 2019, there was a blight a blight will happen for certain trees. A certain fungus will attack a certain kind of tree that blighted out all the oleander and also the Hollywood. So Hollywood,
that's interesting. So the Hollywood trees had a blight in 2019.
So we have 2 Hollywood trees in our front garden. Those died. One of them survived in the house we have next door. A tiny one was didn't catch the right wind or something to get the blight or whatever, but it survived. But it's a different kind of holly than the 2 that were in the front. But yeah, so I remember saying to Chris Knowles, this is like a divine death of Hollywood. If you ever saw it before, I mean, it's named after this magical wall, this magical wood, and right. It's died,
Right. Yeah, that's interesting.
And the next year comes COVID, and I mean, it's the Oscars are at an all-time low. you know.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, it's over. And some people say good, good.
I'd say good too. I find
You
it
know,
just evil now.
we,
Yeah.
I'll say this about Hollywood. There was a period, and I'm not the only one here because there are a lot of auteurs. There was a period, roughly between, I don't know, maybe like 1964, 65, up until about 1981, where the movies that were being made in Hollywood were tremendous. I mean,
Oh,
they were just really tremendous movies. And I was watching a clip of this guy, I forget his name, but he reviews lots and lots of movies. And he was talking about this period of time in the 70s where it's really, I think, the golden age of cinema. And the reason why it was such an interesting time is because the marketing people hadn't gotten a hold of Hollywood yet. They hadn't gotten a hold of the process. And so you had people that were making movies and the marketing people didn't really know what to do with them. And so there was this freedom. And once the marketing people got in charge of Hollywood, they began to dictate the direction of movies and where they would go. So it became a marketing driven business at that point in time. That really happens in the 80s.
That is a solid thesis. I like that a lot. I mean, I'd investigate that. That's really interesting. You made a great point about Rosemary's Baby, which was a Hollywood production.
Yeah.
But what was the words used? It signified the beginning of.
Well, it's so yeah, it signifies the birth of this kind of bastard independent cinema that comes out of that. Like that's Rosemary's Baby is the first movie. Of course, it's directed by Polanski, who's lionized by the independent film directors. All the young directors look up to Polanski, even though he's not that much older than them. And then, after that, you have like Easy Rider and all these guys coming out of the Roger Corman school of cinema, right? You've got Nicholson and Dennis Hopper and Peter Fonda. They're all, American International, veterans, Bruce Stern. And that's when, this, radical cinema starts to really take place and take root, 67, 68, 69, even up through the 70s. And you have, kind of the rogue filmmakers coming out of USC, and the studios don't know what to do with them. They're just really smart, really talented. And then that all kind of ends when Star Wars and Jaws happen, right? Star Wars and Jaws start the sequel business and the marketing business.
That is a solid thesis there, Robert. I really like that a lot. That's really good. Because
it's one of the most creative and fertile periods of art. I love that period.
Well, as I'm saying, what would art be like if Hollywood got out of the way? I mean, what would filmmaking be like? Of course, it's utopian and it's never going to happen. But I mean,
here this kind of gets back to Chris Rock and Will Smith. I don't. Hollywood's not relevant anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
it's just not relevant. What's relevant is the critical theory, and what's relevant is the top-down talking points. That's what's relevant, and that's why nothing of value or note at that scale could ever get made again.
Yeah, really good point. Yeah, that's a very good point.
You could never make Dirty Harry again. Never.
No way.
Hell, you couldn't even make Gran Torino, and that's years later. There's no way you can make Gran Torino now.
I mean, sometimes now I look back on films that I thought were so cool. It's really infantile in a way. I mean, as a 10-year-old, I thought Dirty Harry was cool, but I mean, now I look at it, I'm like, God, Eastwood. Nobody else could have played Dirty Harry except for Clint Eastwood. I agree with that idea, but he's some awful stilted acting. I mean, it's really bad.
Well, Clint's kind of one note wonder, right?
Yeah.
What's interesting about Dirty Harry is that if you like trace the arc of the character, they politicize him in a very, very covert way. So in the first movie, like he's just Harry Callahan, he's a badass, right? He takes out this complete psycho, and he's not going to play by the rules. But by the time the second film comes around, which is Magnum Force, they turn him into a more sympathetic character because there are guys in the Force that are way more maverick and way more vigilante than even Dirty Harry is.
Yeah.
Right? It's like they turned Dirty Harry into the good guy by creating a police force within the police force.
Yeah.
And
Star Chamber kind of thing. And
yeah, and it's kind of like, oh well shit, Dirty Harry's not that bad, you know. He was able to like defeat the evil fascist white knights inside of the SFPD. John Milius wrote most of that script.
oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
In fact, one interesting thing about which about movie stars,
Yeah.
how they really like he's a one-note wonder, he does less or whatever. That's a formula where they're purposely not doing a Joe Pesci or a Steve Buscemi, because the star is there for you to transpose yourself onto their face and onto their experience. So they let you fill in a lot of the other bits. So the star is never going to have the meaty role. That's what people are. Oh, I love the bad guy roles because I can really sink my teeth into them. Well, that they mean that because they're more interesting, the bad guy roles. Every actor they all know that because they, this is a great example. Is we were talking back about who stars being made. Somebody like Kevin Costner was shoved down our throat. I mean, he was like, like just boring. And they just kept on giving us Kevin Costner. He's a great example. There's other better examples than him, but they just kept force feeding us Kevin Costner. A modern day TV one would be Jeremy Piven. I knew his dad back in Chicago. He was a very famous, like a guru acting teacher. Okay, that's where all the
is Jeremy Piven from Chicago?
Yeah. The Piven.
He's supposed to be Ari Emanuel, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he's Ari Emanuel, the actual agent, and of course his brother is Rahm Emanuel, right?
Who was the mayor of Chicago,
who my brother worked with when he was in the Park District in Chicago. But Ari Emanuel, Jeremy Piven's dad was like a guru, and that's where what did they call the guy in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, the Cusacks were all there. Okay, all the Cusacks studied there. In fact, I came back from Malaysia one time. And because I was doing these, I never studied acting. So I came back from Malaysia after doing one of those soap operas, and I went and took a course with Cusack's sister, whatever her name was. Okay. Can't remember her name right now.
Joan Cusack.
Joan Cusack at the Piven Theater. And Jeremy Piven, that guy, go look at him. He was given more TV pilots than any I think he might hold the record for TV pilots that didn't make it. I think he actually holds the record.
Really?
They kept on forcing.
He's got more than Don Rickles.
Well, I mean, in terms of pilots,
pilots didn't make it.
That didn't fly. Okay, they just kept on trying to, and he wasn't known by anybody until by mainstream TV watchers until Entourage.
Right. I mean, he plays Ari Gold. You know what else? I always thought he was like classically miscast and out of place. He's in Black Hawk Down. I'm like,
I don't remember that. Yeah.
See, you don't even remember it. But there are other characters in Black Hawk Down, like that those guys are in Black Hawk Down.
Yeah. God, that's interesting. That's really interesting.
It's like, why is Jeremy Piven in Black Hawk Down? This is strange. So the other thing with Clint Eastwood, real quick, is that the film after Magnum Force, was it The Enforcer or something? I forget the name of it. But in that movie, he has to take on a new partner. And his new partner is Tyne Daly. Oh, there's your buddy.
This is one of my buddies. Yeah.
So he has to take on Tyne Daly as a partner.
Oh, right. That's a good one. Yeah.
So now he embraces a woman, a female cop, right? So can you see like the transformation of Dirty Harry? It's like we start off, we identify with him as this badass and doing things that we'd all love to do at a certain point. But if you follow his arc, man, he really turns into a social justice warrior in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean that should be the title of your thesis, the wokeification of Dirty Harry or something.
It's interesting how that happens, and that's all Hollywood.
Well, it didn't. Right? It happened for a reason, but I'm sure Tyne Daly becomes that big, and of course there's the initial the initial she's my partner, or shuts the door on her or something like
That's
that.
right. He has this beef going on with this other woman, who's trying to shove him down his throat as his partner. But ultimately, she carries her weight, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And they're equal partners,
he
more or
disrespects
less.
her in the end. He's sitting in the lieutenant's chair, and then she comes in with it, and then she shuts the door on a young, handsome guy.
Yeah, yeah,
A young, handsome Mexican.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So now we
yeah,
go to ethnicity after feminism, right?
yeah, yeah. So it's funny how this stuff, again, it's programming.
It's program. It's reality creation, is what I like to call it. Yeah.
It's
Or culture creation.
okay. So we're a little off script again, but we're still in the
We're still in Hollywood.
we're still in the field, right?
I just look at the back. Whenever I think we're drifting, I just look at their backdrop. Like, okay, we're still in Hollywood. That's a good.
So for me, one of the most insidious pieces of programming, as far as a movie goes, is the movie Slapshot. Do you know Slapshot?
Yeah. That's what I say.
Okay.
Not really well.
So for people who don't know Slapshot, it's a hockey movie, and it's about a minor league hockey team.
Not a porno. It's a hockey.
And Paul Newman plays the captain, a grizzled old veteran of this minor league hockey team. And everybody, all these dudes love Slapshot because the characters are so funny. You've got the Hanson brothers, you've got, Ripper and all these, really unsavory characters. Well, that movie, the script was written by Nancy Dowd, whose brother was a hockey player. So she has some, inside baseball or inside pop around hockey. But when you really look at Slapshot and really deconstruct it, it is one of the most, how do I say this, insidious anti-men movies ever made.
Wow.
It's insidiously anti-male because when you look at it, all the female characters in the movie are more sympathetic and they have more power than the men, right? Even the owner of the hockey team is a woman.
Yep.
And Paul Newman finds that out, right? And she could care really less about Paul Newman and and his his charm or whatever, right? And Paul Newman's wife, who leaves him, Francine, right? She's a hair cutter, and even she has more power than him.
That's right.
Right?
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Right. So, and then all the dudes they're just caricatures. That's all they are. And then there's this one scene where he says, "Oh yeah, tell this guy they're playing an opposing hockey team, and he says, tell this guy about his wife who left him for this other woman." Like that's a scene from the movie, and he tells this guy that story, and the guy loses his fucking mind, right? But it's another kind of thing where a woman is like leaves this guy for another woman. So there are all these themes in Slapshot that are all about.
That is on. Is there no topic that you can't talk on?
Well, I've studied this movie, but there's one character in Slapshot that's a man that is shown in a sympathetic light, and it's Michael Ontkean, who was in The Rookies, and he plays Ned Braden, and he refuses to do the goon stuff. And at the end of the movie, he's cavorting around on the ice, taking his uniform off to the stripper theme.
Stripper music, yeah.
Right. And he's the one guy that is lionized in the movie, right? And so all these dudes who love Slapshot, oh man, the Hanson brothers, really, they don't even understand that they're being played and they're even being programmed, right? It's insidious.
It's central intelligence, buddy. I mean, that's the thing, is that I think it's old school blogger Miles Mathis calls it the Operation Men Are Pigs. Okay.
Yeah.
And it begins. So what they did is they men are pigs. They need to divide men and women. This is the last step in the communist break down the nuclear family, dividing men and women, right? Of course, we all know Gloria Steinem was financed and paid for and was an agent of the Central Intelligence.
Total CIA agent. Yep.
No, it's not a conspiracy theory. She's on tape saying it herself. Okay, she was funded by the CIA and worked. She actually said worked for the CIA.
Yep.
And then then you come that, and now we're at the stage of just because this is all anti-woman. Everything we're talking about is in the end anti-female. Men are pigs. They're going to be still the worker bees, right? And the breeders. But the key is they want to kill off the female energy. I mean, this is all. That's why I can be the guy who's the champion of the he/she's in Asia in the late 80s, early 90s, but be able to differentiate the fact that what we're seeing now in the trans movement, okay, the trans agenda, it's an agenda to kill women. And now they're talking about, which is never going to happen, but I mean, babies in test tubes and all that kind of stuff. We don't need the woman. She's irrelevant to all this, right?
Right. Yeah.
But the ultimate goal is destroying the feminine, I don't want to say divine feminine, by the way, because that's got a trick in it too, by the way. But the feminine, the killing out, it's eliminating women. I mean, it's that bad.
Yeah. You can even see how this is happening in Hollywood, where they've replaced like male superheroes with female superheroes, but the films are so bad. Right, so bad and so unbelievable that is even like reflecting the killing effect in a lot of ways. Like they're trying to elevate women and make them into these masters of the universe or whatever, but it's having a kind of a reverse impact on the whole thing, and it's really bizarre.
I mean, that's what the feminism is. Not amplifying feminine power. What it's doing is saying women have to become really asshole men.
That's right.
That's what it is. I mean, it's not, everybody from Margaret Thatcher to Hillary Clinton to who are mass murderers, by the way. Okay, without a doubt. It's telling you to become the worst man you can be. That's how you survive, and that's how you become. So it's not empowering women. It's giving them horrific powers. To act on the wills of men. Oh, we're getting some sort of weird alerts right now.
So when you were bringing that up, it reminded me of a movie that I think is really pivotal, and a lot of people don't really remember it in the context of what we're talking about now. But back then, this movie was huge. And that's The Crying Game, right?
Oh yeah.
The Crying Game was huge, and of course the whole thing was, well, you don't want to tell people what's really going on in The Crying Game because you'll blow the movie, right?
And my old friend Forrest Whitaker is in that movie we were just talking about before we got on air.
He's in The Crying Game.
Doesn't he play a soldier or something like that?
He does play a soldier in The Crying Game. That's right.
Okay, go on.
No, but that's one of those pivotal movies, right? Because you're basically, it's kind of a replacement theory for the woman.
That's right. And shortly after, De Niro comes out where he's rooming with the trans what's his name, who died of the drug overdose. De Niro becomes that De Niro dresses as a woman in that movie too.
Which movie is that?
Oh, it's with Philip Seymour Hoffman plays a trans and plays a trans and I think De Niro is his erstwhile, reluctant roommate or something like that.
Right. Yeah. That one went under my radar.
Yeah, I can't remember the one.
But The Crying Game was huge, man.
It was huge.
And the theme song was sung by Boy George. Right.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And and you watch Boy George, and it's like, I remember the first time I saw Boy George, I'm like, the hell is going on here? Right.
I long for the Boy George days. That wasn't
well, the first Culture Club album was great.
Yeah.
It really, I mean, he had a great voice and, the weird, compelling image and everything. But, fast forward, he's singing The Crying Game in that movie. So Hollywood is so weird, man. It is such a strange place. What do it seems like you're pretty entrenched there and planted there. And
Well, because we have property here, but I mean,
Yeah.
literally, I mean, maybe next time we talk, we can go into the my COVID story, because I was literally lost my job and was blacklisted because I defended 15 of my 50 clients
well, let's just get into it now. We don't have a
who
time
would not because based on their own personal medical choice, they were not allowed on a movie set and they could not be hired. So I had 15 clients. I could have just put them aside. And I said, if you're ever going to take a stand, this is it, because this is your job, is to represent and get your clients work. And if the thing standing in the way of them getting work is the fact that they made a personal medical choice, I've got to stand up against that. So I wrote a what do you call it? Letter, an open letter, which was posted everywhere. And at 10 in the morning, I released it, saying that this is no different than when, and there was a time when people had to take an AIDS test to be on a film set, okay, to do and so and that was deemed illegal, of course, right? Okay.
Right.
And I said, this is no different. This is wrong. They could have tested them. They could have done testing, PCR, misappropriation of PCR as a test. They could have given them PCRs they didn't want to go through that hassle, because that's how it was in the beginning. People were getting PCR tests when COVID happened. And then what happens then was they said, no, they've got to be, they must be injected with the Donald Trump warp speed mystery injection. And if they don't have that thing, they can't work. So this to me is so wrong. So I wrote this open letter saying how wrong this was, what I'm saying to you right now. At 10 in the morning, I released it. I was working at home that day, 6 p.m. I just got blocked out of all my accounts, breakdown services, all these, my own computer, just all locked out of my emails, everything.
So this happened like over the course of a day, you were done.
Yeah, in the course of the day, between 10 and 5. And then the agency put out a letter saying, I've moved on to greener pastures or whatever. Okay. I got 3 calls on a Tuesday, on a Wednesday after the letter came out, or on a Thursday, because the letter came out, the announcement of my moving on came out on a Wednesday. Thursday, I got 3 calls saying, hey, we heard you left such and such agency, come and work for us. Between Thursday and Sunday night, all of them canceled my interviews and said,
rescinded their offers.
They said the position's been filled, which is ridiculous, right? But I mean, because there's no such thing as a position. They wanted to take you on, So then I was like, oh shit, I'm blacklisted too, I mean, so somehow that it's so top down, it's amazing, And
Wow.
So just like that, I cannot even I can't get a job in Hollywood anymore. And none of those clients are still not working to this day, because they still have the mandatory testing until the end of the month.
That's interesting. So I think tomorrow is when the executive orders are supposed to come down, right? 3/11, isn't that what?
Well, now 3/11, tomorrow is the anniversary of the fake pandemic. I mean,
that's right.
Tomorrow.
That's right. So
I think it's the end of the month.
End of the month is when Biden is supposed to.
And LA goes along with that. Yeah.
Right. Wow. So what's life going to be like on the other side of this?
I'm writing a fun book right now just for fun about, but I mean, just, I got to figure that out. But by the way, you're going to, who's on your show Sunday night? Because you should talk to have a good, that's an anniversary show of the announcement of the official global pandemic. 3/11.
Yeah. So I don't know. A lot of times I fly solo on Sunday, but maybe it'd be a good time to go back and look at, the astrology of 3/11, 2020.
Yeah,
that might be a good topic. I clearly remember that was one of those days, right? To me, it was like a 9/11 day. And I remember I was going to watch a basketball game. And I think they had started the Utah Jazz versus, was it the Mavericks or the Spurs or somebody like that? And then they stopped the game, right? Because Rudy Gobert had tested positive, and Rudy Gobert, who now plays for the T-Wolves, he does this weird thing where he's like infecting the microphone. Okay, like, but Rudy Gobert is like treating this thing as a fucking joke.
Wow.
Right. But as soon as I saw that, I knew that they were going to cancel the NBA season. And that was at I think it was about 9 o'clock that night. At about 9:30, 10, I got in my car, I drove to HEB, and I bought about $300 worth of shit.
Yeah.
Right. And I had already, because I knew the toilet paper thing was coming.
Yeah, I stocked up on everything already too. Yeah.
I'd already had the toilet paper thing. I knew it was coming. But I remember I was the last person in HEB that night. And I never buy like, you know, $300 worth. And that's $300 worth of like, you know, 2020 groceries, which is probably twice as much as you would get now. It might have even been more than $300. My cart was full. So I get out of there and I'm like, I put all my shit away. And then the next day, it was like the hordes. They just descended upon HEB and everything is wiped out, right? They go to Walmart, everything is wiped out. And I knew it. I
had gone like I think like around March 5th, and I bought like, you know, 2 big boxes of, you know, pinto beans and jalapenos, and the guy was like, what do you got going? You work in a restaurant? And I said, listen, brother, you better stock up. They're gonna do some sort of fake lockdown for some sort of fake pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I met that guy again later on, because I ended up shopping at Vaughn's all the time because I was not allowed to. I wouldn't wear a mask, you see, so I wasn't allowed to shop at Whole Foods. But Vaughn's, I was the only one in the whole place, and even the security guards were like, "Here comes that guy again. Let's just walk away." And they were so cool. They just like walk away so I could go to the store.
I even bought a freezer off Craigslist.
I remember that actually. That's when I first knew you. That's right.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, let me get this freezer. It was like $80, and then during the whole pandemic, you couldn't fucking buy a freezer at a retail outlet. They were just gone, right? You couldn't get one. Yeah. So you know, I could see this coming a mile away, right?
Yeah. So do your astrology. I think that's a good. I forgot Sundays is by yourself. That's right. The Creamies come on the first Thursday, the last Friday of the month. The Creamies are on. The
Creamies are on the first, and then Russ Winter is on the last Friday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So and then who do I have next week? I've got somebody coming on the 24th, who has been on Freeman's show. I forget her name, but she's kind of worked her way out of the kind of Mormon operation.
Oh, right? Wow, that'll be interesting.
Yeah, so she's coming on the 24th. If Steve is in the chat, he'll put her name in chat because he's the one that's hooking that up. So I actually have an opening for a guest next week. So we'll see if we can do to fill that. But this has been great, Lyle. Thanks for coming on.
No, really, my pleasure. And you never cease to impress me. I mean, I'm loving your thesis on the Dirty Harry, the wokeification of Dirty Harry.
The wokeification of Dirty Harry, man.
Brilliant.
It's all right. It's all right there before your very eyes. Yeah. So when you write your book, we'll have you back on.
And if we ever do this again, too, I want to talk about Mulholland Drive. I've got a whole bunch of shit on that.
Well, why don't we do this? Like one of these Fridays, we'll do a breakdown of Mulholland Drive and Lynch and that whole scene, because Mulholland Drive is really intense and weird. And
plus, I can tell you the whole story. I can tell you the Tom Mix story and all the.
Yeah, let's save it for that. Let's save it for that.
Yeah,
because it's the one David Lynch film where I feel like Lynch is doing some show and tell.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the only one.
Yeah. So let's do that. Let's do a Friday on Mulholland Drive.
And before then, you'll watch You'll watch Under the Silver Lake.
I'll watch Under the Silver Lake, and we can reference that. And we'll bring in the Laurel Canyon stuff too. Yeah, which is part of the whole Tom Mix thing.
And so Under the Silver Lake brings in Squirrels and Silver Lake, where I am right now, and there's all kinds of other stuff. And Mulholland Drive, by the way, I got some stuff on that that's going to blow your mind. But thank you so much for the time. I love your audience. I'd love to be, I hope I didn't, there's, like I said, so sophisticated. I hope I didn't bore them, but
No, you've been great. And, and you've been a great addition to hanging out and getting to know you and fantastic, really fantastic.
My pleasure. Love to all my friends in Chatteria, as I say, and and I'll see you guys on Tuesday.
All right, brother. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye. That was our friend, Mr. Lyle Coyotl. How about that? A little dive into Hollywood. And when we get into Mulholland Drive, we'll do a really deep dive. And we'll get into some Lynch and Laurel Canyon and Tom Mix, and it'll be cool. And we'll line everything up. We'll have some stills. It'll be a really good show. Really, really good show. All right. Thanks for being here, one and all. Have yourself a wonderful weekend. Mods, thank you for all you do and keeping law and order with the wrenches in the chat. Chattaria. Salute. We had a peachy sighting today, and I actually had a client, and the client had a mystery. Well, she had a glimpse into the mystery of Peachy. So maybe on Sunday night we'll see if we can coax Peachy onto the show. But Jasper now has this thing just turfed out. He's been here the whole time. Isn't that right, Top Cat? Yeah, you're the top cat. All right. Use your head in order to discern what's real. Your heart to set what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. You guys take good care. We'll see y'all on Sunday night. Bye for now.